Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Madam Chairman.
I hope everybody is enjoying this sunshiny day and able to go out for a walk. And everyone who is listening in from the public, please try to get outside the next few days and enjoy the beginning of spring. Before we begin, if you go out back, you can actually see some yellow crocus coming up, which was quite a surprise to me yesterday, and quite a pleasure for all the beauty that the renewal of spring brings to us, both figuratively and literally. So I'd like to call this meeting to order. It is about 9:03, 9:02 on March 3rd, Wednesday, and we meet. Please have the roll call.
Bates.
Here.
Berman.
Berman here.
Ford.
Here.
Fries.
Here.
Gums.
Gums here.
Kenyon.
Here.
Caius.
Caius present.
Martin.
Here.
Molina. Sanchez.
Here.
Strathman.
Here.
Surges.
Surge is present.
Pepe. Weber.
Here.
Shepro.
Here.
Bragg. Okay.
Okay, we're all here. Thank you. I see Mr. Onzik out in the audience. So Mr. Onzik, would you please do the honor and do the Pledge of Allegiance for us?
I pledge of allegiance
To the United States of America,
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible,
with
with liberty and
and
justice for all.
for all.
Wonderful, thank you. Did we get some new flags? Oh, look at that one. Absolutely. Oh, these are
Oh,
lovely.
I like
Thank
it.
you. Yeah, I know. Oh, this is just wonderful.
Yeah,
Good.
they are.
We're going to have hundreds of flags by the end of the year. We'll have to have a flag display for sure. Now, may I, appreciating the work of our students, thank you all the teachers and schools who have shared those with us, and parents. It's absolutely gorgeous. May we please have the approval of the minutes? May I have a motion?
Gums moves.
Comes in, Mr. Shepro. Are there any thoughts, comments, changes to the minutes from the last meeting? Please call the roll.
Bates.
Here, yes.
Berman.
Berman, yes.
Ford.
Yes.
Fries.
Yes.
Gums.
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Caius.
Caius, yes.
Martin.
Martin, yes.
Sanchez.
Yes.
Strathman.
Strathman, yes.
Surges.
Surge yes.
Tepe. Weber.
Yes.
Shepro.
Yes.
Thank you.
Molina, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, very good motion. Now the minutes pass. Now, are there any public comments? I don't see anybody in the audience. Are there any public comments in writing? And are there any public comments online? Hearing none, all righty. Mr. Onzik, could you please present the monthly financials?
Good morning, everyone. There is a financial report included in the agenda packet. It's the budget versus actual performance report for the departments the county board office is responsible for, and that would include the county board office as well as the Riverboat Fund. But rather than take time to comment on that, I would like to take a few minutes to review the resolutions that I sent out to you last evening, just so that we can make sure that everyone here would understand what they're about. So the first one I'd like to review is authorizing issuance of RFP for cost of service study. This resolution would just simply authorize the finance department to issue an RFP for consultants to submit proposals to conduct a cost of service study. The last time we did this was about 7 years ago. And this is the time, 7 years ago is when we updated the recorder's office, the county clerk's office, the sheriff's office, and animal control fees. So we would like to do that again and possibly adjust our fees according to what the study might reveal. And of course, that decision is again up to the board as to what adjustments would be made, but it needs to be based on a cost study first. Since I had submitted this resolution to the Finance Committee, Ms. Wolnick had asked that I add another item. I had misunderstood her and I thought it was stormwater fees that she was asking to be reviewed, but it's actually subdivision fees, and I believe she sent out a revised version to you this morning. So if you could cross out the reference to stormwater fees and replace it with subdivision fees, then I'd like to ask that that be the version of the resolution that's submitted for county board. The next resolution that I'd like to talk about, it's a little bit more involved. It's the resolution that we present to the board each year, in which we take the excess revenue over expenditures and allocate it to various reserves and purposes for the next fiscal year or future years. So the very first part of the resolution, I'm not sure if this is the one that's displayed. Okay, that's the correct one. Okay. The first part of the resolution outlines what the excess revenue over expenditures for fiscal year 2020 are composed of in general terms. The total amount at this point is $19,922,953. I'm sorry, $922,953. This amount may still change in the next few weeks as we're still finishing up reconciliations and audit adjustments, but I don't think it'll change significantly. But this is the very latest figure that I had as of last evening. So if we go further into that little table, the first thing we need to do is acknowledge the fact that there was almost $3.4 million of revenue reduction as a result of the COVID pandemic. And so that is contributing to the 19 million, but in a negative sense. So the first thing we're doing is we're going to take some of the payroll reimbursement that we have received from the Coronavirus Relief Fund and apply that to that shortfall. So that's that second line item. So that by applying it to that revenue reduction, we're pretty much offsetting that effect. Then we take the remainder of, of the payroll reimbursement, which is $15,002,354. Added to that, we also have roughly a $50,000 variance, positive sense of revenue that's non-COVID related. And then we also had almost $4.9 million of savings throughout the general fund that was unrelated to COVID. So all of those items together lead to the $19,922,000 figure. So that is the figure we need to work on allocating. So then we go on into the next whereas clause down, where we're talking about the $592,888. When we put together the budget for 2021, we had already planned on taking that portion of the COVID payroll reimbursement and set it aside to fund the lease payments in the future for the body camera lease lease agreement that the county had entered into. So by setting this aside in the Public Safety Sales Tax Fund, our lease payments for the duration of the lease would be covered. We then have $42,623 that was part of the sheriff's budget that was originally budgeted for a purchase of a vehicle in 2020, but it wasn't delivered until 2021. And so that budget needs to carry forward to the fiscal year 2021 to pay for the vehicle that was delivered in 2021. We then, as you might remember, the Sheriff's Office had offered an early retirement incentive, and it involved payouts over a period of 2 years to those who agreed to take advantage of that benefit. The cost of those payouts for fiscal year 2021 is $238,959. And so that portion of savings from the Sheriff's Office is going to be set aside in the reserve at the end of fiscal year 2020 to pay for those payouts at the end of 2021. There also then is the remainder of $585,926 more savings from the Sheriff's Office budget that the sheriff had asked to be set aside to fund vehicles in the future. So those savings will be set aside in the Public Safety Sales Tax Fund. Earlier, a few months ago, the court services had requested that $125,000 of their operating savings be reserved to fund building improvements at the Juvenile Justice Center. So that is also included in this proposal. More recently, the treasurer has requested that approximately $25,000 of operating savings from fiscal year 2020 be set aside for fiscal year 2021 to pay for the legal printing fees for the tax sale that would have otherwise taken place in fiscal year 2020 but was delayed into 2021. So they're asking that the budget for those fees also be moved to 2021. So that leaves, let's see. Just want to make sure I'm not skipping something here. Okay, I'd like to move down to the $1,500,000 reference, and this is something that we have been doing over the last few years, where we take some of our excess savings and move it into the capital fund. And so this $1.5 million is the same amount that we allocated last year. And then the balance of that is the $2.4 million that I'm proposing that be placed in the Property Tax Freeze Protection Fund that we could then tap into if needed to help balance the next year's budget. There is also then savings from payroll reimbursements that were related to the IMRF costs and the FICA costs that is also then going to be set aside in the special reserve to fund future COVID expenses. So all of these details, oh, and then there's one last item that I needed to add to this resolution. And there was a settlement that was agreed upon regarding Comcast and cable franchise fees, that $50,000 a year be deducted from our cable franchise fees in order to pay for that settlement. And so this is simply adding a budget adjustment to enable us to charge that $50,000 to the insurance liability fund. So the figures then you see are kind of grouped by category according to what I've referenced here and by fund. So the first group of budget adjustments has to do with what is being moved into the Public Safety Sales Tax Fund out of the general fund. And so there you see the $592,888 being moved there to fund the body camera lease payments. We have the $42,623 being moved to cover the vehicle purchase that was delayed it had originally been budgeted in 2020, but was delayed until 2021. And then we have the savings from the sheriff's office of $585,926 being set aside for future vehicle purchases. So that's a total of $1.2 million being put into the public safety sales tax fund. Then the special reserve fund is where most of the additional COVID payroll reimbursement is going to be stored for future use, and that's that $14,409,466,000. We have the $125,000 being set aside to help fund the building improvements at the JJC. We have $238,959 set aside to pay for the sheriff's office early retirement incentive payouts. And then we have the $25,000 being set aside to cover the treasurer's legal printing fees. And that's all being stored in the special reserve fund. We then have the $1.5 million being transferred to the capital fund. And let's see, then we have the $2.4 million being transferred to the property tax freeze protection fund for future use in balancing our budget or for what other needs the board may determine. We then are moving the reimbursement for IMRF expenses related to COVID payroll reimbursements. We're moving that out of IMRF into the special reserve to be added to that amount. That's also for COVID related expenses in the future. And then the same thing within the FICA savings due to COVID payroll reimbursements, the $1,125,929 will also be moved to the special reserve to fund future COVID payments. And the last item on this long list is a $50,000 budget adjustment to allow us to charge the settlement fee from Comcast to the insurance liability fund. So I know it's a lot of detail, but hopefully by having reviewed this with you, you have a better understanding of what this is all about. I can pause now and take questions regarding this if you have any.
Bates, please.
Mr. Shepro and then Ms. Bates.
Joe, for the cost study, is that going to be like every fee looked at or only with respect to certain requested fee adjustments?
These are only some of the certain areas that were mentioned here. So this would be in the sheriff's office, the county clerk's office, recorder's office, animal control, and then also the county's subdivision fees. These are the fees that the county board has control over. There are certainly many other fees that could be looked upon. I think we more recently looked at development fees, so that was more recently done. So I didn't include that here, but that certainly could be added. You know, this would be like the permit.
Is there such a thing as a list of all the fees with the year that they were last adjusted?
There isn't one in existence. Normally the individual departments kind of handle their own fees and their updates, but I could certainly try to see if I can get a survey from everyone to see if there's anything more that could possibly be included. It may be that, for example, health department fees might be included, but in the past, they've handled that on their own, but if they would like to have those included, we can certainly do that. And I believe offices such as, I think it's either court services or judiciary or combined, they have some fees, like for example, what they would charge other counties for housing their detainees here at our facility. I think those are, they independently use a fee study and set those fees according to that. So there are other fees, but they don't all necessarily be subject to this type of a cost study.
My understanding is that for these types of fees, you cannot increase it without a fee study
Yes.
suggesting that their study shows what you want it
Yes, that is definitely true for the sheriff, county clerk, recorder fees that are listed here.
Thank you.
Bates, please.
Mrs. Bates? Yes.
Um, uh, as a newbie, I have to ask a question, which is how in the heck did we end up with $19 million at the end of such a terrible year?
Well, it is a surprise. If we go back to the very first paragraph of the resolution, it outlines it in general terms, but there's a roughly $18.4 million worth of COVID payroll reimbursement. So that's the bulk of it.
Okay,
And that has to do, and the bulk of that has to do with reimbursement to the sheriff's office, because it was considered that the majority of their time and expense was COVID related. And this is not by our determination. This was determined by the federal regulations and the CARES Act itself and the guidelines that were issued from there. So that accounts for most of it. We did have that reduction in revenue of almost $3.4 million. But then what to me is the most surprising of all is the almost $4.9 million of savings that is non-COVID related that occurred from all of the departments. And a good portion of that has to do with the shutdown that occurred. So there was a lot less payroll expense involved and other expenses. But in the sheriff's office, they had reduced their staffing. They did not fill vacancies. They offered early retirement incentives, so they have a large contribution to the savings. And a large contribution came from court services and judiciary, I believe. So if we were to look more closely at each of the individual departments and offices, you could see where these savings came from. But yes, I agree. It is very surprising to see.
thank you for such a very good answer. Thanks.
Okay.
Mr. Martin?
Joe, when we do determination of cost for these things, do we include, or do the consultants include something, I'm not sure I'm being terribly clear with it, but like the rental value of the property? I mean, do we maintain, the county maintains these buildings, and is there that indirect expense as it's related to, for example, if I go to record a deed, the county paid for the maintenance of that building in addition to paying staff and other things that I think would be directly included. Are there any of those indirect considerations that are included in that cost determination?
I'm trying to think back in my memory to 7 years ago to remember how they did it. I don't think it included the cost of buildings. It included most every other possible cost that's involved. And some of it has to do with how we ourselves allocate cost, and we do not allocate cost of buildings to various departments and offices or depreciation. We don't do that. But I can double check for you, and if I'm wrong, I will certainly let you know.
I don't necessarily want to create a new study, but I mean, if I get a grant to run my program, okay, and it pays all the expenses, the county general fund is still maintaining the building that I'm operating my program in. And I didn't know if that was, if we wanted that to become relevant to determination of fees and other considerations, or if we have in the past, but.
It's certainly a question for the consultants when they submit their proposals, if they would somehow be able to include that based on the information that we have available and factor that in. I just don't recall if they did that already.
The thought runs through my mind.
Yes.
We've got a lot of real estate, and we have to heat it and electrify it and do all the things that we do. And I just wanted to know if that was part of the conversation. Thanks.
If I may, I think that's an excellent point, Mr. Martin, so that each of our departments have a real strong assessment of what their actual costs are, both for utilities and for potential rent if they're not controlled on campus. I think that's an excellent, because that's a real hard cost of what that department costs the county. I would agree with that.
I agree of the significance of it. I just don't know that we have the capability to do that, but we could see what we can do. It's just, that we don't have any mechanisms in place to allocate costs like that across the county.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting we create a new department.
Well,
to
it
make that
may take
determination.
that.
But the question passes through my mind. We maintain a lot of real estate here.
Mhm.
And I didn't know if somewhere in the flow, if there's a way of looking at it and saying what does it cost to operate the treasurer's office? Or I'm just picking on one that came to mind, but anyway, I don't want to take up the meeting.
I could move on then to the next resolution if there are no other questions.
Why didn't he pick on the development offices?
I'm sorry?
I'm joking. I was joking.
Okay. Well, the next resolution then is authorizing the miscellaneous fiscal year 2020 budget adjustments. And basically, on what most of these are, these are the result of an analysis to make sure that within departments, we have the categories of expenses, of their actual expenses. I'm sorry, it's difficult to put this into words. So we need to take the total of each category of expense and look at the actual total expense for that category and compare it to the budget total for that category. And they need to be within budget by category. And the categories I'm referring to for departments would be the combination of personnel, salaries and wages and benefits. That's one category. Another category would be contractual expenditures and commodities. And then another category would be capital. So we look at all the departments and just make sure that everything is lined up in terms of budget that way. And we do this at the end of the year because we can't be making adjustments like this repeatedly. So we wait till the final figures are in and then make the adjustments. Within the building management office, there's many adjustments just because we're trying to shift available budget and shift it to the line items and the categories which needed more budget. So fortunately, there were savings within the personnel area that could help offset the needs, like for example, in utilities and janitorial services. And then at the very end, there is an amount that was needed to help balance the budget of $18,700 from the contingency. Within the treasurer's office, it was only $790 to help balance within the commodities category. Within judiciary and courts, they just needed $4,994 to balance the commodities area also. Now, there are also then, this is a point I could explain this. For those of you who are new, you might remember that as part of the budget process for elected officials' offices, there were times in which the county board chose to reduce the budget for a particular elected official office in order to balance the budget for the year in total. And it was up to the elected official to allocate that budget reduction to the various line items. Some chose not to, and that's fine, it's with their prerogative. But now at the end of the year, when we see where there are savings on particular line items, we have an opportunity to allocate that reduction to a line item that has sufficient savings in it to offset it. So that's what I've done here for judiciary and courts. And by clearing that unallocated reduction to the budget, it just helps make reporting cleaner because it's always was difficult to try to explain that budget line item being a negative amount in relation to all the other line items. So this takes care of clearing that away, and we have much cleaner report as a result of it. Within the state's attorney's office, we have a $49,806 adjustment to help cover commodities and their contractual expense categories. No, I'm sorry, it's only within contractual expense, and we're moving it out of commodities. Within the sheriff's office, um, there's several adjustments, but most of them have to do with clearing out that unallocated reduction to the budget of 589,000 by moving savings from salaries and healthcare contributions. We're able to offset that unallocated reduction. And then there were some items that needed to be offset as well, such as building improvements. Within court services, it's a similar situation where they had an unallocated budget reduction of 120,000 for services and 32,000 for commodities. So this is moving savings to help offset those unallocated reductions. Within environmental management, we just needed to move funding from salaries and wages into the contractual consulting line. Development, it was just a tiny adjustment of $52. And then as a result of the final review of coroner expenses, there was some expense that was originally thought to be possibly eligible for COVID reimbursement, but it turns out it wasn't. And so there's an additional $15,250 that needs to be moved out of contingency. So mostly these are housekeeping items, aside from that transfer of 15,000 out of contingency for the coroner, and then that transfer for 18,700 out of contingency for building management. Everything else is just simply shifting budget between budget line items within that department or office. So it's a complicated accounting issue for us and probably for you to see, but it's just necessary to clean up the accounting. And the last resolution I have is for fiscal year 2021 budget adjustments.
Excuse me,
Yes.
Mr. Onsick, I do have a question regarding the coroner.
Okay.
Going forward, since we're still very much in the pandemic and there may be additional, unfortunately, autopsies, is it very clear now what is allowed and what is not allowed?
Well, yes. I mean, the issue is the offices submit the expenses and charge it to the account. And it was actually just a clerical error. It wasn't because of a misunderstanding. Something was just misclassified as a COVID-related expense, and it really wasn't. And it didn't come to light until we reviewed in more detail. So I think it is clear now, especially after all these months of reviewing expenses, what is eligible.
Okay, thank you.
The last resolution I have then is for authorizing fiscal year 2021 budget. So what this is doing is taking care of what we, assuming that you approve the allocations into the reserves for the end of fiscal year 2020, we're now then going to tap into those reserves for the purposes for which they were intended. So the first one is moving, establishing the budget in the public safety sales tax fund for the vehicle expense that was rolled over from fiscal year 20. That's at $42,623. And then for additional purchases for the sheriff's office of $585,926. Then in the special reserve, this is where we stored some items to be drawn upon in this year. And this is that $238,959 payout for the early retirement incentives. So it's being pulled out of the special reserve and then distributed over the funds where those expenses will be recorded. And then the last item is the $25,000 that the Treasurer's Office had asked be rolled over into 2021 to cover the legal printing fees for the tax sale that was delayed until 2021. So these were fairly straightforward. So the last thing I'll just comment on is that, each of these resolutions has changed since they were originally presented at Finance. The changes were highlighted in the copies that were sent out last night, and then the one that Jody Wolnick has sent out this morning. So when you get to that point in the agenda where these resolutions are being submitted for your approval, I would ask that somebody make a motion to amend them to be the versions that we've just presented to you this morning.
I'll make the motion.
Second, Berman.
There's
Roll call.
Is there any discussion on this? Everybody understands everything that was said? We're all good?
Sure.
Okay. All right. It was very complicated.
Trust,
Thank you.
we trust Mr. Anzic.
I'm learning.
Everyone, we're all learning. All right, may we please,
They learned alphabet 30 years ago.
we have a motion on the table to accept these. Is that accurate?
As amended.
As amended. So may I please have a roll call?
Bates,
Yes,
I'm sorry, I don't think we're at that point of the agenda yet.
That's what I thought as well.
So-
That's what I was confused by. Thank you. So the report is accepted. Thank you very much. Now, is there any old business?
Oh, we gotta go to consent agenda.
Hearing none. Is there any new business? Yes. Mr. Kenyon.
There's a
Mr.
lot of
Capra.
cleanup probably that could be done with the county code, but one provision that it seemed under the last board was the requirement in the code that every board member has to get up and stand to address the board. And I would suggest that we might put that on a list to be repealed.
Okay. If, I would not argue, and as we interpret the word stand, I think stand, we can do it instead of literally, we can do it figuratively to be recognized. I think it's probably the true intention of that wording, in my opinion.
Yeah, from what I, sorry, just on that, from what I understood, I think it said the chair must acknowledge and you rise to the attention of the chair. So I don't know if stand is in the code or if it's just rise. But that would be, like you said, Madam Chair, two different meanings of what rise means and what stand means. So I think only the previous chairperson used that meaning literally. I don't think it had been used before, so.
Yes, and thank you for that clarification, but I do think it's, the intention was not literal, but figurative. Unless you would like to rise, and that's fine with me as well. Is there anything else, Mr. Kenyon? Ms. Shepro, I'm sorry, so sorry.
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, hearing no new business, may we move on to the consent agenda? And I'd like to call on each one of the committee chairs to remove a resolution or ordinance from the consent agenda. Mr. Martin, Development.
You're saying to remove?
To present or to move, you have two items.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. I have two items. The first being proposed ordinance 19415 rescinding. And the Development Committee, in fact, moved that forward for consideration by this committee and ultimately by the board. And some procedural issues have been raised in the interim. And so what is being recommended with concurrence with the State's Attorney's Office is that we table this motion today. Mr. Van Kerkhoff has already put wheels in motion to have the proposed zoning amendments before the Zoning Board of Appeals at this next meeting. And the zoning and the in the development committee at its next meeting, so that at the meeting from a month today, we can take this matter off the table in conjunction with approving the proposed zoning regulations, and we don't delay the process of its consideration, but we are not putting the cart before the horse, or not asking people to approve a rescinding of an ordinance without, in the abstract, without any reference point. So after that long ramble, I'm going to move that we table this matter to the
Raz,
next,
seconds.
next meeting.
Second.
We have Mr. Van Kerkhoff here. Would you like him to speak to that matter?
No,
No? Okay, just asking. That
I
was-
mean, he's welcome to speak, but I don't think we need it.
Motion to table.
We just,
Not
we're just
debatable.
trying to get the ducks in the correct row here.
Okay, very good, very good. And I think we need to have a vote on that. Is that correct?
Roll call.
Since we're tabling. So may I have a motion to approve tabling ordinance?
Just had one.
Oh, we just did,
I
I'm
moved
sorry.
it,
Yes.
And a second too.
and I think
Need a
Mr. Fry seconded it.
Second, okay, very good, thank you. Now, is there any discussion?
Can't discuss a motion to table.
Cannot discuss a motion to table.
Yep.
So may I have a vote to table the motion until next month
Right.
at the
Maybe say next month, the next board meeting.
the executive committee meeting, at the next month's executive.
Next
committee
month's
meeting.
executive committee
Yes.
meeting, correct?
Correct. Please take the roll.
Bates,
Yes.
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Ford,
Yes.
Fries,
Yes.
Gums,
Yes.
Kenyon, Caius,
Right, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Sanchez,
No.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Surges,
Burgess, yes.
Tepe, Weber,
Yes.
Shepro.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
And Madam Chair, the second item on my portion of the agenda is a proposed ordinance establishing the Big Timber Oak Special Service Area. I move passage of that ordinance.
May I have a second to establish the ordinance? Let's read it out loud so everybody's very clear, and people who are listening. Big Timber Oaks Special Service Area of Kane County, Illinois, and the levy of taxes for the purpose of paying the cost of providing special services in and for such area. Second, Mr. Shepro, and is there any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Bates,
Yes.
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Ford,
Yes.
Fries,
Yes.
Gums,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Caius, Martin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Caius. Molina,
Molina, yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Surges,
Burgess, yes.
Tepe, Weber,
Yes.
Shepro.
Shepro, yes.
Okay, passes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Martin. Now, Mr. Shepro, could you please present and move all three items?
Sure, thank you. Right, well, the first resolution is authorizing certain actions relative to the tax agent. This comes up from time to time as parcels are sold. Many of them are sold through private negotiations as opposed to an open auction, because many of them turn out to be very small. So I would move adoption of, does that have a resolution number? does not carry a proposed resolution number at that, but item number 1 under executive.
Second. Did you move? Thought you moved.
No, the motion is second.
Yeah.
And do we have the resolution?
I
Or is it right in
did
front of
not
me?
print the packet. Blair, is that included in the,
In the packet.
I believe that's it, the relative to taxation.
yeah,
Mhm. Okay, so there it is. Everybody can take a look at it. Yes, we have it included. We have a second.
Madam Chair, Surges here.
Yes,
Hey, Blair, just to let you know, I was having trouble downloading the agenda packet to the PDF off the email as well. So I'm trying to follow along on screen because I couldn't get it up this morning.
yeah. It's a large packet from what I've been told.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to just make you aware.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion. we
I
can-
have one item of discussion.
Yes,
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, we traditionally in executive session don't vote on every single item.
Then-
We'll be here till 4 o'clock. So normally the chairman goes through his list of items or his or her list of items.
Hmm.
And if there's one that's pulled out, it goes
very
on the full board. But, traditionally you move all, like in my case, I would move all 9.
I think at the last meeting or so when that came up, what I understood we had agreed was that that would normally be done, as I think eventually after some discussion we did with finance and with transportation. You are correct. With respect to the executive items, because I think that item number 2 may be have some required additional discussion, I did not move it with the other ones.
so we are
We
now,
could, well, I guess to Mr. Fraz's point, I could amend my motion to forward item number 1 and item number 3. Item 3 being the rental agreement for purposes of establishing a mass vaccination site, and I believe that is not included at this point. But I will move it with the understanding that we will have that document available by the time it reaches the full county board.
we are hoping that that is going to happen. And I can share an update with you on that if you would
Please.
like.
Yeah,
Late afternoon at 5 o'clock, we did have a conversation with the governor's office and as well as the Illinois Department of Public Health. And they are asking for several sites to be brought forward to them where we could do mass vaccination sites. And we would be supported, the health department would be supported by the National Guard, which I think we can find to be of great help. And that payment, the cost of running those 2 sites would be split between the National Guard as well as the $1.25 million grant that we will be receiving. So that's potentially, it's going to be allocated. We are going on very fast track to find appropriate sites, negotiating a potential lease on one, and taking a look at another site the next 2 days. And these sites will be presented to the National Guard. They'll be bringing an advance team to Kane County to review the sites to make sure that they're appropriate and equitable. Having transportation is going to be one of them, and safe environment, handicap accessible, ADA accessible. And if it meets with their approval, this will be happen very efficiently, very quickly, and we may have 2, one for sure, perhaps 2 mass vaccination sites so that the vaccines can be distributed quickly to our population. So it's,
So, and actually, that resolution could be amended at the county board meeting if we have additional sites.
that's
Or for
correct.
that matter, if we're going to use those sites and not the realty metric site, so.
Correct. And the sites are yet to be determined.
All right, so to clarify, my motion then would be to forward number 1 and number 3 under executive at this point.
Very good. Very good.
And do I need a second for that?
Second,
Eight
Berman.
second.
We have a, Ms. Bates, who's second?
Fraz second.
Franz, thank you,
Franz
Mr.
second.
Franz. All right, now, may we please, do we have a vote on approving number 1 and number 3?
Bates,
Yes.
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Ford,
Ford, yes.
Fraz,
Yes.
Gums,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Caius,
Yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Strathman,
Yes.
Surges,
Sturgis, yes.
Pepe,
Pepe, yes.
Weber,
Yes.
Shepro.
Shepro, yes.
Okay, passes.
So the remaining item is number 2, which is a resolution expressing support for the reconciliation bill that is currently, I think, awaiting action in the United States Senate, having passed the House. And just for getting it for discussion, I will move it at this time, and then I would like to speak to it.
I will second. Gums seconds.
This resolution illustrates the difficulty, I think, of the legislative committee process that we have when we want to take a position on legislation. And by the time it wends its way through our process, the train has not only left the station, but often gone into the yard at the other end of the line. The discussion, as I remember at legislative committee, was initially that it might be a useful idea to have board members contact members of Congress from Illinois on behalf of the need for additional funding for state and local governments. But in the meantime, it's passed the House. If you follow the discussion, it appears to be mired in controversy because unlike the state of Illinois, about the only good thing about the legislative process in Illinois is you have to have items germane to the principal subject of the bill. Government has a way of putting odd names on processes. And so this is called a reconciliation bill. And from the debate I've read about, it's anything but reconciliation. It's basically a parliamentary device to fast track certain legislation, but then it also becomes subject to rules. So I guess where I'm going with this is, if the object was to influence Illinois congressmen, congresspeople on this bill, Democrats apparently have all voted for it in the House. And in the Republicans apparently all voted against it. And the concerns were that it included such things as the $15 minimum wage. It seems to me that we don't want to be in the middle of that controversy. So and also by the time this reaches the county board next week, it may well have been signed into law. So I'm moving it forward. It would be my thought that after we see what happens in the coming week, I may offer an amendment at the board meeting, depending on where where that bill is in the process. Because I feel there's some imperative to pass it because on the 14th, the unemployment benefits expire. And I don't think anybody really wants that. So that's it. At this point, I guess I'm moving to forward it, and it's been seconded. I apologize for the lengthy exposition.
Is there any further discussion on this bill? On this resolution, I'm sorry. And I think we're all aware that the $15 minimum wage, a national $15 minimum wage has been removed from that current bill right now. And it'll be addressed differently.
Maybe.
I think it's important to note, and I missed it in my first reading, that this resolution simply supports the concept of money coming to local governments. And I would always have substantial reservation on getting involved, as Mr. Shepros mentioned, in Washington politics. This simply says we want to support us getting some money, and on that basis, I would support this as it moves ahead.
Yeah, good. I would agree. I think I haven't seen the particulars of how this money is to be expended, but I'm sure it's not only going to be for the county, it's also going to be for our local municipalities as well.
Whatever, we're just asking to be considered, so.
Guns, Madam Chair.
Yes, Ms. Gomes.
Just respectfully, as it pertains to getting involved in politics in Washington and getting involved in politics in general, yeah, oftentimes we are behind the curve, but that can be corrected. And what happens in Washington affects everyone, including us. So I would respectfully reject that we not get involved in Washington politics as it pertains to our counties and our municipalities, and lobbying is part of what the legislative committee does, and we should be doing more of it. So respectfully, I support this, and going forward, I hope we can do more of it.
Madam Chair, Bates?
Yes, Ms. Bates.
I would agree with Ms. Gumbs that this is important for us to put our weight behind something that we want to have happen in Washington. But I would also support what Mr. Shepro said about perhaps we could speed up this process so that Ms. Gumbs and the legislative committee could do things like this faster. Thank you.
Hearing any other discussion. And just for lobbying, it was due to our lobbying that we're being considered for the National Guard to help out with the COVID vaccines and that distribution. And that lobbying was done hard and heavy. So I think lobbying is very effective if it's done appropriately and properly and with courtesy. Yes.
Just quickly, my comment was not intended to suggest that we shouldn't be involved in those issues, more as Ms. Bates suggested, that we need to find a way to do it more meaningfully and more expeditiously. And it's difficult. Maybe at the next committee of that group, we can discuss some ways to do that. But, you know, in Springfield, in case in point, by the time we know what the legislation is and go through the committee and the executive committee and the county board, often it's too late to even weigh in on the bills because you've missed the very short window. So I think I'm just saying that maybe we ought to try to take a look at how to become more effective in doing that.
All right, very good, very good. If there's no further discussion, I believe we take a vote.
Bates,
Yes?
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Ford,
Yes.
Fries,
Yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Strathman,
Yes.
Surges,
Surges, yes.
Pepe, Weber,
Yes.
Shepro.
Shepro, yes.
Thank you. Passes.
So that concludes the executive portion of the agenda, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Berman, you have a long list.
Yes, I do. I think the first item would be authorizing our fiscal year 2020 year-end budget allocation and adjustment that Mr. Hansick presented information to. We need to modify that. We did have a motion to earlier, whether that's good or whether we need a motion now to change that.
Is this item 1?
So
Item
one,
2,
2, 3, 4.
yeah, it's
2, 3, 4.
18.
Traditionally, you would do your entire report and then the items that you want to do separately, we could vote for at the end.
all right, that's the, I don't have anything else on my agenda to, is there anything from the Finance Committee or from anyone else? Any?
Mr. Berman, just so clarification, please, you would like to pull out from the consent agenda items 1, 2, 3, and 4?
Yes,
All right.
Point of
1, 2.
clarification.
Yes, yes.
There was no,
It's the intent to pull them off of the consent agenda for the board meeting or just to pull them out for separate discussion today?
a separate discussion today
Okay, very good,
and
very good.
to modify them based on Mr. Hansick's report.
So I'm clear. We're going to approve items 5 through 24 to be brought forward to the full board. Okay, may I have is that correct?
I
Then-
think that's what I heard. Perhaps the chair of the committee would have a motion to do that.
So a motion, make a motion to do that.
That include 18 as well? Because that needed to be amended also.
And number 18.
18, our cost of service study, yes.
Okay, so to be clear, we're pulling items 1, 2, 3, 4, and 18 off for conversation now. We're
Right.
going to approve items 5 through 17, and then 19 through 24. Is that correct, Mr. Berman?
Yes, that's it.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a second. Is there any discussion? No. Mr. Hansick?
I'm sorry, I would just like to clarify that item number 1, that FY20 budget adjustment, that's referring to the county clerk's budget. And there is nothing there that needs to be changed or amended. That one is fine as is. So you could include that on the consent agenda if you'd like.
I will agree to my second as a friendly amendment if Mr. Berman wishes to amend
Yes,
his
look.
motion.
I would like to include item 1 in our consent agenda.
Okay. So do we have to vote on that change since it's already been seconded? No?
No,
Okay.
so we've just replaced it with a friendly amendment.
Friendly amendment. All right. So we are now, we'll go through it one more time. Mr. Berman, if I'm correct in hearing, we're going to be approving on the consent agenda, items number 1, and then 5 through 17, and then 19 through 24.
Yes, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. All right. I think we have a second, correct? May I have a vote?
Bates,
Yes,
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Ford,
Yes.
Fraz,
Yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Kenyon,
Kenyon, yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Surges,
Sturgis, yes.
Tepe, Weber,
Yes.
Shepro.
Shepro, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, passes. Mr. Berman.
Right, items, excuse me, 2, 3, and 4. Could we look at those? I think that Mr. Onzig had proposed the changes. I don't know if we want to look at each individual one to determine what those changes are.
And we're missing number 18 as well?
But 18, we do have that authorization, which came to us late. But that's also,
It appeared that possibly a member had a different issue with respect to 18. Or is that not
So
true?
18 is separate. All right, so we're going to be approving items 2, 3, 4 as amended.
yes.
Second by
Second.
Fraz.
Any discussion? Hearing none, may we please call the roll?
Bates,
yes,
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Ford,
Yes.
Fraz,
Yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Surges,
Sturgis, yes.
Tepe, Weber,
Yes.
Shepro.
Shepro, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, passes. Mr. Berman,
Leaves us with item 18.
number 18.
Yes, I think we need to make a motion to approve that or
I'd like
we
to
can discuss it.
move as amended by Finance Director and Ms. Wolnick.
Okay, thank you. So Mr. Sanchez is second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Bates,
yes,
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Ford,
Yes.
Fraz,
Yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Strathman,
Yes.
Surges,
Sturgis, yes.
Tepe, Weber,
Yes.
Shepro.
Shepro, yes.
Passes.
Passes. Okay, very good.
That's the extent of my finance committee.
Thank you, Mr. Berman. Ms. Molina?
Good morning, everyone. Our Judicial and Public Safety Committee has one item we'd like to move to the consent agenda for next Tuesday's meeting. And that would be just an authorization of extension of intergovernmental agreement between Kendall County and Kane County for the housing of detainees. This is just an extension. There are currently no detainees housed in Kendall County since our last committee meeting. So I make a motion and I ask for a second.
Second, and if, Mr. Tippy, thank you. If there's no further discussion,
I have discussion.
yes. Mr. Berman.
I noticed a discrepancy on the resolution. It says a per diem charge of $60, and then it has in parentheses $70 per day.
Oops.
Typo? So is it 60 or 70?
$70 according to the,
Doesn't it say shall be increased to 70?
no,
Under item B, 1B?
well, I think that's You can't say $60 and then say in parentheses afterwards $70. That's very confusing.
I believe the intent was for it to say $70, but we will
So-
double check with Sheriff Hain and make sure it's the correct version on our Tuesday's meeting, if that's okay with everybody.
That's fine.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. Typos happen. Good catch. So I think that we can move forward with that. Is that correct? And you'll look at correcting that. And may I please call the roll?
Bates,
Yes,
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Ford,
Yes.
Fries,
Yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Kenyon,
Kenyon, yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Surges,
Sturgis, yes.
Pepe, Weber,
Yes.
Shepro.
Shepro, yes.
A motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Molina. Mr. Frost.
Yeah, transportation report. We have 9 items on the list, and I'll move all 9.
Molina,
Second.
seconds.
Item number 1 is a routine adopt a highway approval. Item 2 approves an IGA with the state for federal funding to cover Phase 3 construction engineering costs for our Fabian and 31. And also Orchard Road Highway Safety Improvement Program. Item 3 approves a list of projects to be funded with Rebuild Illinois bond funds. There's 5 projects on the list. Item 4 amends the county road impact fee program. This continues a freeze of the 3% annual multiplier in order to stimulate development. Item 5 approves a contract for construction with Martam Construction out of Elgin for the Ella Thorpe Road Culvert Construction Project. Items 6, 7, and 8 are annual county projects. The first one is for chip sealing. These are countywide projects. So chip sealing projects, asphalt rejuvenation projects, and asphalt paving projects. And item 9 approves a Phase 3 construction engineering service contract with Ames Engineering, and this out of Downers Grove, and this is to oversee the Longmeadow tolling infrastructure project that we approved last month. That's all I have.
Okay. Thank you very much. Do I have a second?
Molina, seconds.
Okay. Is there any discussion?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Caius.
Caius? Yes, Chris Caius, yes. Once again, I rise to speak on behalf of my constituents in opposing the toll on the roadway that we will have to pay to cross our village. I have been, my arguments have referred to often, or in the past as sinister, ridiculous, and insulting, I think, are adjectives and adverbs that are used to argue against the argument. And I contend that a toll that takes 30% of the revenue to pay just for the collection is maybe not sinister, ridiculous, or insulting, but more unwise. I wouldn't encourage my children to get a credit card and run up debt at 30%. And I would not advise the county to do so. So I recommend and would like to take this opportunity to encourage the county to work on ways to retire this as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Caius. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, please take the roll.
Bates,
yes,
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Ford,
Yes.
Fries,
Yes.
Gums,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Caius,
Now, this is to put them all on the consent agenda?
yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'll pull it off then. At the time, I'll vote yes to pass all.
I'm sorry, could you clarify what you just said? I didn't quite hear it.
Well, I'd like to have this pulled off of the consent agenda, but I can do it at the regular meeting. So I vote yes to forward them.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Surges,
Sturgis, yes.
Pepe, Weber,
Yes.
Shepro,
Shepro, yes.
passes.
Okay, very good. I see no need for executive session. And yes, committee reports.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for letting me have the floor for a moment. I'd like to publicly thank all the members of the CAC committee, in particular Jared, who was extremely responsive. We had a lot of phone calls back and forth regarding the COVID help in the township, and we received, to your attention, a letter from Campton Township. It's very short. I'd like to read it to you. It's upbeat and positive. And
Barbara, I don't know if your mic is working.
yeah, it didn't sound like. How's that? Oh, much better. Holy cow. Anyway, dear Madam Chair, on behalf of the Campton Township Board of Trustees and the citizens of Campton Township, I would like to extend our sincere appreciation to you, the Kane County Board, and the CARES Act Allocation Committee for reimbursement funds relating to the response, mitigation, and impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. Many of the township departments, including highway, assessor, parks, and open space, expended considerable effort and resources responding to and mitigating the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. As a result of these efforts, Campton Township was able to maintain and keep open all of our parks and natural areas. Our parks and natural areas have been utilized and continue to be enjoyed by the citizens of Kane County. The Township Highway Department and Assessor's Office continue to provide a high level of service to our citizens. Again, we thank Kane County for the CARES Act reimbursement funds. And it's signed by John Kupar, who's the supervisor of Campton Township. And now that I am on the microphone, thank you, Jarrett, in particular, for helping us so much. And thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for sharing that. Is there any other committees who would like to report? Seeing
Motion
none,
to adjourn.
motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second by Fraz.
May I have a voice vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, thank you very much. Have a great day, everybody.